Say you're a young kid and you're getting your first car and you want to find a great car that you can drive around and take to the track, or you have a really nice car and you want something else you can beat the absolute crap out of. This time on Low Boost, I'm going to go over the best track cars you can get for less than 5,000 bucks. Here we go. I did a video not too long ago on the best track cars you could get for $10,000, and I got a lot of people saying that I should make a video on even more budget-friendly track cars. So I went ahead and compiled a whole bunch of different things to be able to put together this list for you. And I made it on a couple of different categories, not only just reliability and performance, but also handling and how well it brakes. Because when you're actually racing the car, you want to make sure it can definitely be able to turn well and stop without having to spend a lot of money on upgrades. Now, I am going to touch a little bit about upgrades and how upgradable a car can be, but we are still going to be basing this list just off of stock power. But I will talk about the potential it has too.
Number 10.
The EP3 Civic Si is a great car that you can get for less than 5,000 bucks. That is a perfect starter car for you getting on a track. They came with 160 horsepower, 132 pound-feet of torque, and they weighed around 2,700 pounds. So it made it pretty light. Out of the box, they were not as fast as some of the other cars on this list, which is why it made it to number 10. It ran a 15.9 second quarter mile at 87 miles an hour, and its 60 mile an hour to zero braking distance was 139 feet, so not the best. It did pull 0.83 G on the skid pad, and it had a 17.15 pound per horsepower power to weight ratio, which wasn't terrible. Now, this car can easily be modified. It does have an early version of the K20 motor in it, and with some suspension modifications and lightening anything up, it can really handle on rails. People go up on 3 wheels with this thing, and they put a wheel up off the ground when they're at the track with it. So it's a great car to start out with.
Number 9.
I know some of you guys are going to throw your tablet across the room about this next car, but you got to hear me out on this, okay? The 3rd gen Camaro is one of the best track cars you can buy for less than 5,000 bucks, because some of them you can get for less than 500 bucks. Nobody really wants them anymore because they don't have an LS engine in them. But they do have a V8 with good horsepower, great power to weight ratio, good braking, and basically just pretty good everything else. And if you could find a good one with a 5-speed, obviously rust-free, if you're in the southern states, you're gonna have an easier time than us here in upstate New York. The 5 speeds with the 305 TPI engine that had 215 horsepower, 290 pound-feet of torque. They weighed around 3,400 pounds. They ran a 14.9 second quarter mile at 91 miles per hour. 60 mile an hour stopping distance is 139 feet, and they pulled 0.84 G around a skid pad. With a 15.8 pound per horsepower power to weight ratio, the car really was a great performance bargain back then, and because you can get these things for almost nothing now, they can be highly modified later. I'm not gonna say it. Actually, you know what? I am gonna say it. You can LS swap these things. There's a guy out there that took an LS7, de-stroked it, put a flat plane crank in this thing, and revs it to 8,500 RPM, whooping Vipers on the track. So this is a great basis to start a car from, and if you're on a really limited budget, this might be the least expensive car on this list. If you're into any kind of sports car, racing, drag racing, tuning your car. Yes, can I help you?
Do you think, what's her name?
LS projects, custom resto mods, or anything involving cars, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. I have over 60 videos in my library currently, and I'm adding more every single week around all the builds that I do with my dad and some of my friends. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. This episode is brought to you by Extreme Powerhouse. Whether you have an Audi, a BMW, a Ford Mustang, check them out. They have a lot of great performance parts, and if you guys go on their website and use my coupon code LOWBOOST, you'll get access to some extra special discounts. So make sure you guys visit them, and the next time you buy a performance part, make sure it's with Extreme Powerhouse and use the coupon code LOWBOOST, all one word.
Number 8.
The next car on this list is a real performance bargain in the Mini Cooper S. You can get these for a lot less than 5,000 bucks, and they came in both supercharged and turbocharged varieties. There are people that like the turbocharged model better because they're easier to upgrade, but they came out of the box with a 1.6 liter engine that had 172 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque. They only weighed like 2,600 pounds. They ran a 14.9 second quarter mile right out of the box at 93 miles an hour almost. And they had a 109 foot, 60 mile an hour stopping distance, which is one of the best on this list because it's so light. It also had a 15.4 pound per horsepower power to weight ratio. These cars also respond really well to modifications. There's a good aftermarket for them, and they make a great track car if you're just starting out.
Number 7.
The C4 Corvette was made from 1984 to 1996, and they came with a variety of engines and transmissions. But you can get them all for less than 5,000 bucks. If you're lucky, you could get an LT1. But I'm going to talk about the L98 variety because that's probably the most common one that's out there. In a 1989 L98 Corvette had 245 horsepower and 335 pound-feet of torque. It's one of the more powerful cars on this list. They ran the quarter mile in 14.2 seconds at 98 miles per hour, and they weighed about 3,200 pounds. But their 60 mile an hour stopping distance was 112 feet, and at 13.3 pounds per horsepower, this thing packs a punch. You can fit really wide tires on these. There's a big aftermarket for upgrades. If you search, you can find them easily for less than 5,000 bucks for an L98. Some of the LT1s came with 330 horsepower, and you may even be able to squeak some of those in less than 5,000 bucks.
Number 6.
The Mark V GTI was not only on my top 10 under 10,000, but you could get them under $5,000 as well. The 2006 to 2008 varieties came with 197 horsepower and 207 pound-feet of torque. It was a relatively light car, around 2,900 pounds. The turbocharged 4-cylinder is easily modifiable, and there's a number of things you can do to them. They ran a 14.7 quarter mile at 95 miles per hour. At 14.9 pounds per horsepower, this actually has a really good power to weight ratio. I didn't actually find a 60-foot stopping distance on the GTI, so if you guys know, leave it in the comments below. I hope those are car parts that just pulled up. The Mark V GTI is a really well-balanced car, and even though it's front-wheel drive, it makes it easy to trail brake around turns. It's a great car to have as a daily, and it's a great car on the track. I've been on track with these cars, and they're really hard to keep up with the right driver. So keep these in mind.
Number 5.
The next car on this list is the E30 BMW. They made them from 1982 into the early 90s. They only weighed 2,600 pounds, and the M20 out of the 325i came with 168 horsepower and 166 pound-feet of torque. I would not recommend getting a 318i. They just don't make the power, and good luck finding an M3 under 50 grand. They're just almost non-existent, so we're gonna leave them off the list. They're not the fastest car on the list, 15.7 second quarter mile at 87 miles per hour, 15.47 pounds per horsepower, but there's a lot of different modifications you can get for these. Engine swaps are also easy. If this was an S52 swapped E30 BMW, it probably would be the best car on this list, but we're gonna leave it as just as a stock M20 engine that's in it, and that's why it falls to number 5 on this list.
Number 4.
The E46 330i is basically the poor man's version of the E46 M3. You can get them for well under 5,000 bucks, which is almost a quarter of what some E46 M3s are going, but you get maybe half the power. They came with 225 horsepower and 214 pound-feet of torque. They had upgraded brakes from the 325 models. They did a quarter mile in 14.8 seconds at 95 miles per hour. They weighed around 3,300 pounds and had a 112-foot stopping distance from 60 miles an hour, which is really good. At 14.7 pounds per horsepower, it has a really good power to weight ratio. Modifications are very easy to find on these, and these cars are a dime a dozen because everybody wants an M3. So if you're looking for a nice, sleek looking car that you can not only daily, but have as a great track rat for less than 5,000 bucks, this could be it for you.
Number 3.
They made the Nissan 350Z from 2002 to 2008. They made a ton of them. They came with a lot of great performance parts that makes the car basically track ready out of the box. Some of them even came with Brembo brakes. They had 287 to 300 horsepower out of a 3.5 liter dual overhead cam V6, and the car only weighed around 3,300 pounds. They ran a 14.1 second quarter mile at 101 miles per hour, and it only took 116 feet to stop from 60 miles per hour. At 11.49 pounds per horsepower power to weight ratio, it's one of the best power to weight ratios on this list. It's also the fastest car on this list. The modifications for these are endless. There's a ton of them out. You could even get its sister car, the G35 Coupe, or if you're even really adventurous and you want to get a sedan, you could also get those too. But one you might really want to get if you don't already have one is the Coupe, the 350Z, because it's going to be the lightest and it already has some performance parts more than what the other cars have. It's a great, great track car. Lots of people buy these things and track the hell out of them. And for less than 5,000 bucks, this is why it's number 3 on this list.
Number 2.
Number 2 on this list is a car that I actually have, but I swapped the motor out of it, so it's kind of disqualified from this list. I swapped an LS into it and shoved the turbo in there as well. I'll put a link in the description for those videos, but the E36 BMW is probably one of the best track cars you can get for the money. And I'm not just talking about the M3. You could get an E36 325 IS or a 328 for like 1,500 bucks and basically just take it right to the track after that. The 325s came with 191 horsepower and 181 pound-feet of torque. And you can find an E36 M3. They came with 240 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque. They may be a little bit more beat up than the 325s, but they're out there. They both weighed around 3,150 pounds. They stopped in 113 feet from 60 miles an hour, and they ran a 14-second quarter mile at 99 miles per hour and pulled 0.91 G on the skid pad, both which are some of the best on this list. Out of the box, whether it's a 325 or an M3, is one of the best bargain budget track cars you can get for the money. They look great, they handle fantastic, and they're really inexpensive to maintain. At 13.1 pounds per horsepower power to weight ratio, it's one of the best on this list. Modifications are cheap, they're easy. Engine swaps are also easy too if you're into that kind of stuff. This is a fantastic track car you can get for less than 5,000 bucks. I want to go over some honorable mentions. Making this list was a lot harder than making the top 10 lists under $10,000 because there's a lot of cars that really kind of compete for this. But the Subaru WRX, especially the Bug-Eye one, I really was contemplating putting it on this list. The main reason I left it off was because of reliability issues, and finding one under 5,000 bucks might already be rusted all the way through or have a lot of problems, and you're gonna need to work on it. And there are other cars on this list that are actually faster than a stock WRX out of the box. So that one didn't make the list. I also left off the Fox Body Mustang as well as the SN95 Mustangs. If you looked at the comparisons between them and the third gen Camaro, the third gen Camaro actually outhandled them in every test that I found online. It even outhandled the fourth generation Camaro as well. It just was a lighter car. It had a better power to weight ratio, and it had better suspension, even though it was an 80s car comparatively to an LS1 Camaro. So I had to leave those ones off the list, and that's why the third gen Camaro was on this one.
Number 1.
Number 1 on this list, if you haven't already figured it out, the answer is always a Miata. You can get an NA Miata, which they made from 1989 to 1997 with the 1.6 liter, 116 horsepower engine, or a 1.8 liter with 128 horsepower engine for less than 5,000 bucks, maybe even less than 2,500 bucks, and they only weighed 2,100 pounds. You can even find NB Miatas from 1999 to 2005, which came with a 142 horsepower engine for probably under 5,000 bucks as well. These things handled like they were on rails, pulled 0.92 G on the skid pad, and they still did the quarter mile in 15.8 seconds at 87 miles an hour. One of the big positives about this car is, even though it doesn't make a lot of power, performance modifications add a lot of pop to it because the car was so light. Adding 10 horsepower in this car is like adding 25 in a Camaro. They only took 122 feet to stop from 60 miles an hour, and they had a 15.49 pound per horsepower power to weight ratio. Being so light, so affordable, so reliable, and having the braking and lateral G that this car can do, it really makes it a momentum car, and that's why, even though I'm not a big Miata fan, it's gotta be number one on these lists. So there you have it. Let me know if I missed a car, or if I have a car on the list that shouldn't be, or if you think I should keep making these lists, or if you think I should make another list about something else. Just let me know in the comments. I always appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.